here's our down the road pattern. We're going to show you how we do this detail work on in the thread. This is a free motion technique. We call it thread scribbling, and watch how we do this. It's easy. What we're going to show you is how to get this. It's two different colors of thread here. There's a dark gold that we're going to lay down first, and then on top of that is going to be a bright gold, and that's going to give it a little bit of depth. Okay, the thread work on this piece is on two separate pieces. This is the freezer paper pattern for this pattern, and it's just in this tiny piece and this large piece. So what I'm going to do with this is the freezer paper, so you can see it's shiny. We're going to lay this on a light box, and you could also use a window. If you have a window, you don't have access to a light box. And then what I like to do is tape it lightly on the light box, just so it's not going to move around. And that little bitty piece, it goes right here, but I'm not going to put it there. I need to get it a little away from it, because what's going to happen is we're going to have seam allowance around these pieces. So that's why I'm backing that off. Then I'm going to lay this on the light box and turn the light box on. As you can see, the light box comes open, and you can see the little stripes here. The next thing I have to do is trace these stripes with a marker. I use a permanent marker, and it needs to have a fine line. So what I'm going to do is just lightly trace these stripes, and they're bigger at the end, and then they get progressively smaller. If you have trouble seeing them, the other thing you could do is color them in with a marker so they're solid. Then you would be able to see them a little bit better. Okay, so after that's done, you can now I'm going to turn this off, and you will be able to see where they are. There's the marks, and now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and sew them up. The first thing we have to do is stabilize this fabric, so because we're going to put a lot of thread on it. So what I've done is I'm going to take this is just an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and I'm going to put it underneath this where I've drawn, and then I'm going to take a couple of pins and just pin it so it doesn't move around. This is basically a free motion technique. And what I'm going to do is lower your feed dogs, and then I've got a foot that this is my favorite free motion foot, and it's clear. And what I always like to start at the top here, and then I'm just going to go down using the dark gold thread first. I've got gold in the bobbin. I've got gold in the thread up above. And first I'm just going to pull the threads up. And then I'm just going to take a few stitches. Now this is really tiny in the background, so I'm just doing a few stitches, about a 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to move up and do it again, because there's 3 little stripes in the way in the distance. And at the end, I just take a few stitches right on top of each other, and then pick it up and move to the next one. As these stripes get closer down, they're going to get larger because that's the way it would be in the perspective. Further away, they're small. And what I'm doing is kind of outlining the shape and then just going back and filling in some thread. When they get bigger at the bottom, then I'm going to start doing this thread scribbling. So continue to follow the line, outline it, and then just kind of scribble in. And you get to the bottom, and I'm kind of thickening these up pretty good. Raise it up, move forward, take 3 or 4 stitches straight down, and then do the same thing again. Outline the stripe, and then go back and forth and just make it a little thicker. A few stitches at the end, lift it up, do that again. I'm also holding onto the paper. This paper, that way I can push it through a little easier. I've got to thicken it in. And try to do some swirly lines a little bit, not just straight lines. It looks better. A few stitches at the end. Lift it up. A few stitches at the beginning. And outline it. And fill it in. You can see when you get it a little darker, it's kind of nice. Now I'm just layering this thread on top of each other to make it thick. It really shows up. Shoot, you could get some of that glow-in-the-dark thread and make it look like a real robe. Okay, so now my dark gold underlaying is finished, and so now I've got to go back and add the light gold on top. I'm going to trim this away, trim it from the back, and I like to go ahead and trim these little leaders off first. A little tiny pair of scissors work really well for this. You can see they're really little at the end. Okay, now for the bright yellow part. Okay, so what I've just sewn is this color, which is my base color. Now I'm going to go on top, and I'm going to add this bright yellow on top of that onto one side, and that's going to just make it look good. Okay, so I'm going to start at the same place I did before, at the very top. Bring up that back thread. I went ahead and kept the dark gold in the bobbin. I just changed the top thread. Okay, so these up here, I'm just going to lay some of this along the top edge. I'm going to skip to the next stripe. Lay it on this left edge. Again, this little bitty thing at the back, it's so little, but it looks good once it's pieced in. So it's worth the trouble. A few stitches to secure it, and then and what I'm doing here is maybe like 3 rows of this bright yellow. start to see a little bit more of it because it's bigger. I'm going to grab hold of the paper and scribble a little bit because it's big enough where you can really see it. But that paper gives you a handle, and if the paper wasn't there, it would be hard to do. So I'm just scribbling the one side, not the whole thing, because I want that other side darker. So many neat things you can do with all the decorative thread we have now. This is just a nice way to just add a little detail to your picture. You could also do this with paint. You could paint it on. You could do it by hand. This is just the way we do it. And then after it comes out, you can see the kind of that little bit of a shading. I think it adds quite a bit. And then I would trim my little paper, my little leaders. You see what the back looks like. I'm going to tear away this paper here in a minute. I'm going to get rid of all these first. Remember, I left some space in between my little piece and my big piece because I've got to leave seam allowance there. Okay, do the same thing over here. Just go ahead and trim all the threads. These little scissors have little teeth on one of the blades, and it grabs hold of the thread really well. They're very good. Okay, and then I go to the iron and I press it really good. So I've pressed it flat, both on the front and the back, and then I'm going to flip it over and you can see the paper, and I need to get rid of this paper. This is just typing paper, and I'm just going to tear it away. Now they do make and sell a stabilizer for this type of work, but I use the paper out of my trash usually. So just pick the paper off like that. Then it looks like this, and we're going to take our pattern pieces and then we're going to iron them to the right side of the fabric. These are our two pattern pieces that we started with. They're the ones on the freezer paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where my pattern lines up with what I've sewn. And then I'm going to take a hot iron, no steam, and I'm just going to press it directly on top of what I did. And you might notice it's not exactly perfect, but nobody's going to know that. And then lay this on here. This is the little piece that we left extra space in between. A good gauge to know how much to leave is if you put your finger between it, because then you can cut down the middle and you've got seam allowance for both sides. And then I would just trim away, again leaving a generous seam allowance. And then these pieces are then prepped and ready for you to piece your whole picture together. And this is how we prepped the thread work for the Down the Road pattern.